Hey y'all, Tato here. I'm making the beginning of this video a Scott the Woz parody because he's associated with the Wii U for some reason. I want to be associated with the Wii U too. That's why I've replaced all of my appliances with Wii U accessories. Side note, does anyone know how to get hummus off of Nintendo Land? The Wii U is one of my favorite generations of Nintendo's. Favorite, not best, key distinction there. It's the first console I truly owned when I was younger, but aside from that, it just has its own vibe. It's emblematic with the gamepad and how wacky that thing is. Sure, it may have been too much of a focus and may have helped tank the console sales-wise, but I love it so much. That's my goddamn failure. That appeal also shines through in the system's library. I adore games like Wind Waker HD and 3D World, among others, not only because I think they're fantastic in their own right, but because they exist in spite of hardship. Even with Wii U shortcomings, Nintendo didn't diminish the quality of their games when they easily and understandably could have, but no. They continue to produce top-tier games like they always have, as if they weren't in a dire situation, and it's really admirable. I feel like the high status they've given to the Wii U's library is especially applicable with the system's 2D platformers, which I think are up there as one of the best assortments of 2D platformers per console Nintendo has had, and possibly even the best, no joke. The Wii U's 2D platformers, those being New Super Mario Bros. U, Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, and Yoshi's Woolly World, are all brilliantly made games that I love to bits, or in the former's case, one that I have an ironic hyper-obsession over that I will get to in a bit. To clarify, I'm only considering games that were directly published by Nintendo, or include characters or elements Nintendo directly owns. If it is not on the Wii U section of the Wikipedia article that lists all of Nintendo's products, and if it is not labeled as a platformer by the game's individual article, then I won't count it for this video. Although, I did make some exemptions, since I wouldn't consider them as platformers myself, those being Kirby and the Rainbow Curse, Mario vs. Donkey Kong Tipping Stars, and Super Mario Maker. Rainbow Curse is more of a puzzle navigation game to me, and doesn't necessarily fit, and Mario Maker is a level creator first and foremost, even if the levels are platforming levels. Tipping Stars is also more of a puzzle navigator where you have no control of your character. And, even if I wanted to include it, I can't even get it legally! Sorry to all 9 Tipping Stars fans who wanted to see it in this video. Alright, so for the sake of the video, we'll just be talking about these 3 games, and in addition, I'll consider any re-release as the same game, just so I'm covering what I believe to be the definitive version. And at the end of the video, I'll look back at all the games and come to a decision on which one I think is the absolute best 2D platformer on the Wii U. I've been making New Super Mario Bros. U a core part of my online presence for a while because, well, I don't know, I think it's kind of funny to obsess over such a lukewarm game. But I wouldn't even begin to do that if I didn't genuinely like it in the first place. I do, however, have to acknowledge that from a critical perspective, Mario U isn't anything special. In some of my past videos, I've commended the game's bosses and world map and such, and while I still think those aspects are good, I was mainly coming from the perspective of those elements compared to the other New Soup games. From a broader lens, I way oversold them. I like the interconnected world map. I think it functions really well, and it also looks cool, but Layer Cake doesn't connect straight to Frosted Glacier. I mean, come on, that pretty much disqualifies this map from getting anything above a 7 out of 10. The individual worlds, in a vacuum, are well designed as both a set piece and a map, and I like how each world is themed around a type of food, even if it's not super prevalent because this is still New Super Mario Bros. The worlds interconnected with each other, though, It feels like such a hodgepodge and an excuse to market it as a game with an interconnected world map, which I don't think that's a huge selling point, but it's what Nintendo did, so f***ing sure, I guess. The world map does a good enough job for what it sets out to do, but compared to Mario Wonders, how each world is unified by Petal Isles, or Mario Worlds where every world feels like an extension of Dinosaur Land and the whole map feels cohesive. More thought went into the placement and structure of those world maps that make them easily superior to Mario U. And the bosses, oh my god, what the hell was I on when I complimented them? They f***ing suck! They're way too easy as always, and the fight is over after a single hit for most of the boss fights. All that's changed about the Koopa Links from Wii are their weapon choices. They don't know how to use a magic wand anymore, now only some of them do. Wowie f***ing zowie! It's still the same old jump on their head and camping their shell scene in previous installments. In my dedicated Mario U video from a couple of years ago, when covering Roy's boss fight, I said it's fun if he can get it going, but that's a really big if. I remember when I was recording footage for that video, I wanted to specifically not hit Roy right after he popped out from his shell so I could show the platforms that'll spawn if he has time to attack, but also to point out that the fight is pretty fun when you do that. Just one issue. Why the f*** do I need to do that to get any semblance of value out of the boss fights? It is absurdly too easy to hit them the instant the Koopalings emerge from their shells. If I compare this to Wonder again, which, mind you, also doesn't have good boss fights, at least fixes this issue. You're prevented from hitting Bowser Jr. immediately after he pops out of his shell due to this burst of wonder or something, I don't know. That single thing that deters you for like 2 seconds makes the fights with him substantially meatier, more memorable, and actually fun to wallop. I will say though, Bowser Jr. doesn't fall into that trap with his boss fights in Mario U either, and neither do Kamek or Bowser, resulting in their fights being some of the best in the game. Don't get me wrong, you can still take them down much quicker than you're expected to, but for these bosses specifically, that's more of an advanced trick rather than a design flaw. For Kamek, the platforms disappear as he warps to different points in the sky, so you'll have to remain gliding with the Super Acorn if you want to hit him again much sooner. Bowser Jr. in his second fight is only reachable when he gets one of the clown car fists lodged in the floor, or with the Super Acorn you can just boost to him, and there's some difficulty here since the gap between the ceiling and his head is quite low, and you may end up being hit by a fireball or Bob-omb. With Bowser you can hit him right after he comes out of his shell, only if you manage to keep the clown car while he's spinning around, which is not an easy feat. It's slower than him, and if you're knocked out of it, you better hope that Bowser Jr. doesn't take it back. These three are great bosses, and it's only because hitting them in quick succession is actually difficult. Hell, for Bowser Jr.'s first fight, you can't even chain hits at all, since you need to wait for him to attack before you can damage him. As seen with these 4 fights, this game is capable of making the rest of the bosses like that too. All Wonder did was give Bowser Jr. invincibility frames, and it improved that game's fights a ton. It is so simple to fix every boss in the game with just that one simple design change. Dear God! The game has very little individuality, too much of it is borrowed from other Mario games, everything outside of the voice work and some of the bosses' animations are stale as f***. I could go on about how terrible of a game Mario U is and rip it to shreds, and yet I don't. Instead, I admire this game with a strange, undying passion that I continue to question the existence of. Right here, I'll outright say that New Super Mario Bros. U is easily the worst 2D platformer on the Wii U. Like, not even just from a critical perspective. Tropical Freeze and Woolly World are just that good, and I like them more even considering my ironic obsession. But it's the one I care about the most. If I'm being honest, the biggest reason I made this video was so I could talk about Mario U on the channel again. And it won't be the last, you've been warned. Now, the biggest reason I adore Mario U is because of... And don't worry, I can actually explain my assessment bias. To start off, I really like the levels. I can name a lot from memory, which either is because I think they're good enough to stick out in my mind, or I have severe brain rot, and it's probably that one. Like, show me the world map and I could probably get around 60 to 80% of the level titles correct and spelled correctly, including things like hyphens and exclamation points. Actually, let me go do that. Here's my results. Something I'm conflicted about are the game's star coins. I still like them as a neat special item to hunt for, but this is the worst game in the series when it comes to extra collectibles. There's a ton that feel really unfair and are hidden in such infuriating and random places that I probably would have only found them with a guide if I didn't have brainworms that serve to tell me where they are located and how to get them. Yep, I should have known that the Sand Geyser in particular has a hidden block that leads to a star coin, not cryptic in the slightest, my bad. Fortunately though, star coins amount to almost nothing. All they do is unlock the levels in Superstar Road, so you don't have to deal with most of them on a casual playthrough. Unfortunately, star coins amount to almost nothing. If I'm doing a run of a game where I don't intend on going to Superstar Road, there is 0 point to seeking out them, except for the dopamine hit I get for collecting Big Shiny Object. Bad implemented collectible that gives you virtually nothing in return. What joy. The star coins aren't an exact reflection of the levels they're in, luckily, because I think the level design itself is great. It might be another case of my uber familiarity with this game, but at least for me, you're able to achieve a flow in most levels where you put all of your moves and your skill to good work. Oh yeah, and I like the movement as well. I love the thrilling sensation I get when I'm blazing through the game's levels while also making it look as flawless as possible because I'm goated at this game. Your jumps are on point, and the multitude of other options you have at your disposal feel great to use. I use wall jumps, ground pounds, triple jumps, and the like to constantly reach higher places, or stop my momentum, or get a quick boost in speed after exiting a pipe, or smashing right through some blocks in a satisfying fashion. It's what I appreciate in a Mario game. All your moves are great, but my favorite addition to Mario's moveset has to be the mid-air twirl, one of the best air correction tools the 2D platformer has had. It gives you the perfect amount of air stall to extend your jumps, stay in the air a bit longer, or whatever you're trying to do. And it's so simple yet so effective. That, and you can activate it with a button, which makes it like 6 times better than a 1 in Wii by default. New to you is the Super Acorn, which is my top 5 Mario power-ups ever, not solely even from a biased perspective. That thing is just so fun. It's definitely the best power-up in a Mario game for gliding. You can go decently far without losing any of your speed, and the quick boost up akin to the propeller mushroom, which, similar to that, is nice for reaching high up ledges and such. Combining these two abilities together, along with a higher spin jump it provides, allows you to reach much more areas and heights than you could before, and I absolutely love having it at every moment I possibly can. The levels also accommodate for it, having obstacles you can only cross if you have a super acorn, like this field of munchers in Spinning Star Sky. It's an amazing power-up, and I'd love to see it return in a future installment. To sum that all up, the levels greatly accommodate for the movement, and I love that. The theming of the levels are also pretty good, at least as much as the new Soup game can. The world themes still go in that very basic order of grass, desert, water/snow, jungle, mountains, clouds, lava that most take issue with in this miniseries for being both a boring assortment of themes and very repetitive. While that is something I agree with, I do want to bring up Peach's Castle being the lava world since I find that really cool. You can witness the detriments Bowser's influence has had on the castle that contrasts heavily with where you were in the opening cutscene, and it makes for a compelling final world. Mainly by theming, I'm talking about the ideas present in each of the levels, and most are great. Unfortunately, some ideas are directly ripped from Wii, like how Thrilling Spine Coaster is pretty much an asset reuse. And while I enjoy the level, I kinda wish it had more flair to it instead of being a Poison Cave version of 8-7 from Wii. Not all levels derived from Mario Wii are handled poorly though. Some take an idea laid out in that game and expand on it by doing their own thing. For example, Light Block's Dark Tower is super indicative of Wii's 5 Ghost House, but instead of putting the light blocks on a timer that starts with pressing a switch like it did in Wii, it adds something new. The second half of the level does reuse that same light cycle, so it's not completely perfect, but the first half gives the light blocks a different pattern where they instead flash on and off periodically. The main thing giving this level a fresh coat of paint, however, is a super fun route you can take if you're able to carry the superstar throughout the whole level. With the star, you don't have to worry about the lights, and it's the reason why I love this level so much. One of my favorite levels, Walking Piranha Plants, makes excellent use of Rock Candy Mines' mountain theme, pushing it to the absolute fullest. The level starts with some chains and wobble rocks, and there's a sub-area accessible from multiple points in the ceiling where you can hit a P-switch to glide through a cloud of blue coins. And you get the choice between using the Super Acorn and Ice Flower within the level. That doesn't have anything to do with mountains, I just really like it when a Mario level has multiple power-ups. And, of course, if I'm talking about really good levels in Mario U, I have to mention Painted Swampland. The aura of this level is unmatched by anything else in the mini-series, and you can understand why just with a single glance. The Van Gogh-inspired art style of this level is incredibly cool, and I wish the game had at least one more thing that was as strikingly visual as it. The layout is also pretty fun. You need to find the secret exit if you actually want to progress further in the game, since the main exit will just loop you backwards, which I think is funny. The game should do silly things like that more often. There's so many levels that I could talk about on end, but I won't, since I want to make a ranking video on all of them in the future, and this segment is getting a bit too long. F you, here's Nabbit. I love this Scrunglow, and I will go batshit if he's playable in Mario Kart 9. Please make it happen, Nintendo.
Hey, it's me from the future. This video was written and recorded before the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct on April 2nd, which means there are some things that have changed that I should cover, and this is one of them. We won, Nabbit Bros. We f***ing won.
And to cap off my rambling, the bonus modes. Coin Battle is Coin Battle. It was a rushed out multiplayer versus game in Wii, and it's no different here. Not even the coin editor can save it, since it's so forgettable I thought it was a mode added with the Switch port. Boost Rush is a fine enough mode, you just play some base game levels but with auto-scrolling that'll increase in speed when you collect coins. Fun for 10 minutes, but it's a pretty shallow package. Challenge mode though, that's some good shit. The best side mode in any Mario game so far, and that's not another moment of me being biased either. This mode feels so specifically catered towards me, and I love it. The game that I've become hyper obsessed over and have replayed to death has an additional side mode where you need to be incredibly skillful and knowledgeable about the game. I mean, come on! I've golded every challenge to no one's surprise, but that's actually something I only did last year. Late last year too. The first draft of this part of the video was instead about how I wanted to gold all of them eventually, and I'd say for me it was worth it. It's one of the harder things for a Mario fan to complete, so I would definitely recommend trying this mode out if you're interested. The missions feel more creative than the base game sometimes and are genuinely challenging. The fear of attempting don't touch anything for the first time, even before I unlocked it, scared me, because that thing is brutal. But honestly, it wasn't all that bad. Definitely frustrating, but I got it eventually, and it felt rewarding to complete. It was nice. I'll occasionally revisit some of my favorite challenges, like Star Connection or Elevator Out of Service, after I'm done with a speedrun attempt or a playthrough or something like that, since they're quick and still capture my appreciation of the base game. Challenge mode, at least in terms of its gameplay, is mostly devoid of the banality most come to expect out of a new Soup game, and I can easily understand someone calling this mode their peak of the game. And that's all I have to say about New Super Mario Bros. U, at least for today. It's a very basic 2D platformer and a forgettable launch title that served as a bit of a bad omen for the future of the Wii U. And yet, here I am, treating it like the work of gods. It's a bizarre connection that I've concocted myself into that I find oddly comforting. It's nice to know that there's a game out there that resonates with me specifically. My presence online has become intertwined with Mario U. The game doesn't feel whole without the ironic enjoyment I built up, and I feel incomplete without this random low-effort Mario game. I care for New Super Mario Bros. U, and I'll continue to for as long as I think it's funny. Before I completely wrap up, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention New Super Luigi U, the DLC pack this game got for the Year of Luigi. I'm not going to cover it separately because other than the level design and slightly different movement, it's the exact same game, and I didn't want half of the games I'm covering just to be Mario U and a variation of Mario U. Fortunately for it, I do think Luigi U is better than Mario U in both of the unique aspects it provides. The movement does lose a bit of the precision I enjoyed, but it's honestly negligible, and I find the floaty jumps to be really fun. Level design is definitely a league above. It helps in its favor that its levels are confined to fit the 100-second timer Luigi U imposes on every single one, but that doesn't disregard the fact that they're much more inventive in a ton of ways like difficulty and concepts. It feels like Nintendo tried their best to push the envelope with these, rather than play it safe like they did with a large portion of Mario U's levels. If I were to include it as its own separate entry in the catalog of Wii U 2D platformers, it would rank just a smidgen higher above Mario U. I love that game to death and will always continue to out of sheer will, but at some point I have to swallow my pride and admit that its DLC is clearly a better package. Still though, it's not the one I try to gas up constantly, so it's closer than it really should be. Mario U will always remain as one of my favorite games of all time, and only time will tell if that's for better or worse. But I've already mentioned that the other two 2D platformers that released on the Wii U overcome that extreme bias. The next game up is looking great, but can it really be that good?
Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze is one of the greatest platformers
It's one of the best 2D platformers
And I
that I've
personally
ever played.
believe Tropical Freeze is the
That
best
game
traditional
is
2D platformer
definitively
ever
the
made.
best 2D platformer
Tropical
I
Freeze
have
is
ever
simply
played.
one of the greatest games ever made.
I'd go with maybe. If there's one thing I've heard about Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, it's, one of the best 2D platformers ever made. So, when I went to play it for the first time around the beginning of last year, I had really high expectations. Because of what I had heard about Tropical Freeze online, I was hyping myself up to play one of the greatest games in a genre I adore. A game that I would then revisit constantly, one that would soon become one of my favorite 2D platformers of all time, like it was for so many prolific creators. And it was good. I liked it. I wouldn't have called it the greatest 2D platformer by a long shot, but I still thought it was a worthwhile experience. But that wasn't what I was expecting from this game, and I was left dissatisfied. This is what so many people on the internet I respect believe to be the pinnacle of 2D platformers? Like, again, it's good and all, but it could be better. However, I'd also heard from some of the same people that Tropical Freeze is a game that takes time to warm up to, not in terms of, oh, the end of the game is where it goes crazy, but in replaying the game, revisiting those past levels, experiencing it all again from a new perspective. Like how I was hyping myself up to play one of the greatest 2D platformers on my first playthrough, this time I was expecting to like the game at least a bit more than I did on my first go-around. And I'm happy to report that my expectations were met. While I still don't think Tropical Freeze is the greatest 2D platformer ever made, I do at least consider it to be one of the best. And now I understand why so many people think that way. As I'm writing, my opinion on the game is getting stronger and more positive with every sentence. I'm looking back at my footage intriguingly, seeing other things I could have done and just appreciating the game in general. I'm listening to the top tier soundtrack as I'm writing, which I'll say now, easily the best of the three. I love Woolly World's OST to bits, but I can't deny there are some songs I straight up don't care for. Well, pretty much every song on Tropical Freeze f***ing delivers. Like dude, Punch Bowl and Jammin' Jams have been stuck in my head constantly for the past week or two. I see now that this game is indeed peak. I don't think I'm all the way to die-hard fan yet, but I know I'm creeping up on it with every passing day. Now, with the movement, I'm a bit iffy on. The movement in any 2D platformer is heavily going to influence how I feel about it, and starting off, Tropical Freeze doesn't feel the best. Your options are pretty limited. You've got a jump, a roll, pounding the floor, and grabbing things. 4 movement options. Compare that to Mario U, where you have much more at your disposal. Your options feel super diverse there, and they all come together to create some insane possibilities. Now you may think that means that I like Mario U's moveset more than Tropical Freeze, and you'd be correct, but that's probably because I'm heavily biased. But I'm not saying Tropical Freeze's moveset is bad in the slightest. Despite its simplicity, the controls are able to come together very nicely. They feel responsive and help make the platforming really fun. The thing I love most about the movement is the roll. You're faster in that state, and you can carry that momentum into your jumps to extend them farther and reach places you may not have been able to reach otherwise. I have no clue if this is the fastest way to move in the game, but I was repeatedly rolling and then jumping out of them, just to roll again when I got back on the ground. And it's both fast and fun as shit. If we move from land to water, oh my goodness, these are the best swimming controls I've felt in a 2D platformer, and possibly flat out the best in any video game I've played. They feel so fluid and precise, having none of the issues other games face with their underwater controls. They don't feel slow or like the water's a restriction. Just move in any direction you want. It's all so efficient. The above ground controls, while still good, are flawed because of your limited options, but that's honestly more of a benefit when underwater. There's nothing I would change about the swimming controls. Lastly, your companions are all great aids to your moveset. They're probably why Donkey Kong on his lonesome is so limited, which you can either see as a good or bad thing. Personally, I see the companions as a bit of a benefit, since they all provide unique additions that would make them being something you add to your moveset worthwhile. Diddy Kong is exactly how he is in Returns with his jetpack, and I use him pretty frequently. If there's one thing I would add to Donkey Kong's base moveset, it'd be something for air correction. Sometimes it feels really awkward to just have to commit to a jump with no other way of altering it, so it would be a welcome bonus. Anyway, that's what Diddy is for, so I don't see that happening anytime soon. He simply makes the game more enjoyable and fluid, but he pales in comparison to Dixie Kong. She is quite literally just a better Diddy. All he did was prolong your airtime for a few seconds. Compare that to Dixie, who will not only also do that, but also provide additional height. Odds are Dixie Kong will always be your partner of choice and the one you have with you. Last and unfortunately least, there's Cranky Kong. I'll give him this. It's cool that his staff bounce is the most unique of the three, and bouncing around is so goddamn fun, especially since it carries over roll momentum. But I never have a good reason to pick him over Diddy or Dixie at any point. As I mentioned before, I need me some air correction. There weren't a ton of times where I actively wanted him, fun as he is to use. Cranky's inclusion is really cool, so it's a bit unfortunate he's easily the worst option. Wow, just like Wario in 64DS. Alright, that's all of them, no one else. Oh, and I guess I should bring it up at some point. I don't own the Wii U version in the first place, so the footage you've been seeing is from the Switch port. Oh wait, what's this in the corner? New funky mode? Was this small tangent secretly a way for me to transition into talking about Funky Kong? I very easily could have just played this game in original mode, since that's more in line with the Wii U version, but I did that for my first playthrough and I really wanted to try out funky mode. So, oh no, 3 hearts, my integrity is ruined forever, aw phooey. I played through most of the game as DK, but I went through as Funky to clear any levels I skipped to gather an opinion on him, and holy shit, I love Funky Kong so much! He literally is just Donkey Kong with more movement options, which, if you've been paying attention, is all I wanted. His new moves are indicative of the companions he has to replace, especially with the invulnerabilities to Spike's perk seemingly being there just so you weren't locked out of areas meant for Cranky Kong to reach. That's not an insult to his new moves though, I think they're great. The slow fall is a neat air correction tool, hell yeah. But what I love the most out of all things is just his double jump. I've consistently brought up how fun keeping your roll momentum through your jump is, so imagine that twice. It goes on for longer, letting you reach much farther, and you don't lose any speed with the height bonus unlike how you do with Dixie. And I haven't even brought up that you keep the roll momentum when bouncing off an enemy, which is fun for DK, but it is euphoric as Funky Kong. Because of the double jump, you can reach enemies more easily, and if you hit one, your double jump resets, meaning you can go far enough to hit another one, and another one. And since you're invulnerable to spikes, you can also bounce off of spiky enemies too, and now you're reaching airtime you could only dream of as DK, while also blazing through the level, using that roll momentum the entire time. This Funky Monkey is so f***ing rad. I love it when he's the undisputed best choice to play as. God, the movement is so peak. Well, inside the levels. Moving across the world map is so f***ing sluggish, and everything about it except for Simian Segway sucks. And even then, I kinda wish we got more than just one theme for the world map. They could have even had a different variation of Simian Segway to fit each world akin to another Wii U game. I'm blanking on the name. It also doesn't help in its favor that the loading times are very long. To be fair, this is a Wii U game, but they're still very noticeable on Switch, and they especially don't help as a transition piece in and out of the slowest world map. And now that I've successfully killed off my good mood, let's talk about more things I hate, like the puzzle pieces. Getting all of the Kong letters is good enough and makes for a nifty collectible. These things, however, are sometimes on the same level as Mario Sunshine Blue coins in terms of stupid solutions and hiding places. Thankfully, not as frequently frustrating, but I still hate them. Additionally, instead of just getting a puzzle piece, on occasion you'll have to earn it by completing one of these challenge rooms. I have no problems with the rooms themselves. Trying to collect every last banana is pretty fun. What I do take issue with is how repetitive they are. You'll start to see repeats not that far into your playthrough. They get tiring, and clearing the same ones over and over again isn't really fun, and they also break the flow of the levels they're in. Lastly, for downsides, the story. The game's namesake is really cool, at least. I like the fact that the tropical has freeze, that's neat. That doesn't factor into gameplay a ton of the time though. Most of the ice levels are consolidated into the final world, which makes sense on paper, but the rest of the worlds might have 2, 1, or none at all. Hell, I might just be making up that there's a world before DK Island that has 2 ice levels. The plot involves DK Island getting attacked by a villainous group called the Snowmads, a name I cannot remember for the life of me after beating the game. They attack DK Island with a fierce wind, freezing it over and sending you away to where you then trek back to a ravaged area that was once your home. Boy, where have I seen that before? I don't care about the story a whole lot. Even in the extended Mario universe, they serve just to allow for the gameplay. And as such, it's not a huge deal that there's little substance. I do take issue with how unmemorable the Snowmads are. The enemy designs are cool enough, but they don't have any lasting power. If you've seen Schaeferless' Mario character popularity poll video, you know that he talked about how odd it was that Lord Frederick, the main villain of one of the most acclaimed platformers of all time, only got 3 votes. He also talked about Chum Chucker Charlie, and for good reason, that guy is pretty epic. The Snowmads are neat for what they are, but I see them more as obstacles than villains. But damn, are they really good obstacles. Enemies are a crucial design element, as I talked about earlier, with how they keep your momentum going if you play strategically enough, and that wouldn't be cool and fun as it is if the levels did not accommodate for that. The level design is just peak all around. It makes super effective use of your moveset with rolling, jumping, and they have case scenarios for each of your partners. It's all excellent. Tropical Freeze also just nails aesthetics in such a fantastical way. I mean, look at this, man! I know it's an idea borrowed from Returns, but it's a very good idea that deserves to be brought back again here and also in Mario Wonder 2, I guess. One of my favorite levels, Grassland Groove, makes perfect use of all of Tropical Freeze's strengths. The music and level elements go in tandem with each other as giant platforms sway in the rhythm. The sunset over the savannah bathes the level in a wonderful orange light, and the music goes grander the closer you get to the end. It genuinely feels like a journey of its own that manages to be super fun as well. That's the peak of level design in a 2D platformer right there. Fruity Factory is another one that sticks out in my mind a ton. It combines Juicy Jungle's fruit theme with that of a factory, which creates so many possibilities, like how these spiked planks will whittle down your platforms, or how you'll use some fruit slices as platforms for a brief moment before they plunge back into the sea of saw blades. Frozen Frenzy is this power plant that tests your patience by threatening you with getting shocked if you stand on the platform for too long, and the level also works effectively as a way to build up to the end of the game as the stakes get higher. The 3 ride gimmicks are pretty cool. The least interesting for me is the minecart, which kinda just feels like an auto-runner version of the game, which isn't a detriment. I quite like the levels featuring it, but I find things like a rocket barrel more interesting. First off, the songs that play when you're riding them are f***ing bangers, and the gameplay attached to them is fun too. It strikes a good balance with the sporadic controls that make the rocket barrel as frantic as it is. Rampy's also pretty cool, feeling like a beefed up DK, but what I like about him the most is that he's completely optional. You can just do his levels by yourself if you're up to the challenge, which I think is super cool and yet another compliment to the impeccable level design, and I think they reach their height in the temples. Returning from Returns, these levels will only be unlocked after you've collected every Kong letter in each corresponding world. In these, you'll find some of the hardest levels in the game that will push your skill to the limit. All of them are really fun to go through, and I looked forward to them when I was replaying the game. And just as a cherry on top, the DK Island Swing remix in the even-numbered world slaps. The consistently phenomenal level design is also applicable to the bosses. There are multiple windows to hit the various bosses, but you're not guaranteed to hit all of them, which I like. There's still points where the boss is stunned and you can deliver a pretty easy blow, but there's also some quick ones that both feel intended and fast, which is nice because some of these fights can go on for a bit too long. I still think the snowmans are memorable, and by proxy so are all the bosses, but that pack design that went into each fight makes them fun to conquer. And that's pretty much all I want to say about Tropical Freeze. While I don't think that it's the greatest 2D platformer ever made, there's a possible future where I end up thinking it is. The brilliantly designed levels, the movement, and the super catchy music are all excellent showcases how every single thing about Tropical Freeze is made to be the best it can be. And all of this beautiful design came from Donkey Kong, someone I really only saw as a kid as the one guy I race against in Mario Kart sometimes. I knew the legacy he held in about his own franchise, but it wasn't until I first played Tropical Freeze that I started to truly understand. Donkey Kong isn't just the cool monkey from Mario, he's his own character who has his own selection of wonderful games. I now see Donkey Kong as a face of one of Nintendo's greatest franchises, even with just playing one game. And side note, before we end, I apologize if I had credited Tropical Freeze to do things other games of the franchise did first. It was either simpler to say Tropical Freeze than bring up a game I knew little about, or I just had no idea in the first place, but yeah. By being in the running for the best 2D platformer in general, Tropical Freeze by default is a very good pick for the best 2D platformer on the Wii U. But I wouldn't count on our final game just yet though. Looks like one of the greatest 2D platformers ever has a bit of competition. I got Yoshi's Woolly World right before the Wii U eShop was set to close, as my choice between Kirby and the Rainbow Curse and Twilight Princess HD, telling myself I could just get those games physically later on when I was interested in starting them. At this time, I did not know that Twilight Princess HD is stupid f***ing expensive. I did get Rainbow Curse though. Haven't played it, but I hope to get to it eventually. Tears of the Kingdom was coming out in a couple of months, and I'd heard some more conflicting things about Rainbow Curse, so with that, I picked this game. I also bought Galaxy 2 as well alongside it, but my Wii U shits itself every time it tries to run the Wii menu, and I bought Galaxy 2 more as a test to see if launching an already downloaded game would work, but it didn't, and it's still an issue, and the only reason I'm including this in the video is because it's been honestly a decade at this point, and I still don't know what caused it or how to fix it, and it's been bugging me for a majority of my f***ing life. Anyways, I really like Woolly World. Right off the bat, you can tell this game is special just by the art style. Everything being wool and other arts and crafts thingamabobs makes for such a cool set piece, and it gives the game a very unique identity. Every single element looks great from an artistic perspective and from a graphical one as well. This applies to Tropical Freeze too, but I really like how a handful of games from the Wii U era were visual spectacles. Nintendo really took advantage of their first HD hardware, despite the fact that it was a struggling console. In Woolly World, you can see strands of yarn frizzing off of Yoshi and other yarn creatures and objects, and a good chunk of the textures look exquisite. Woolly World is simply captivating. The yarn isn't just an aesthetic choice either. It'll factor into the level design, like how unraveling certain chunks will reveal hidden items or passages, or how some standard Yoshi enemies and elements have been altered to fit with the yarn theme in more ways than just appearance, like how throwing Fluffin' Puffins will create a line of cloud that you can stand on. And of all the alterations done with the art style, the one I love most is Yoshi himself. I absolutely adore Yarn Yoshi's design to bits. It's a much cuter version than his typical self, and I love playing as his little munchkin. He is the tiniest little scruglow ever, and I will start a forest fire if anything happens to him. His design also goes the extra mile with the yarn theme as an added bonus. His feet turn into wheels when running for a bit, but then they'll become a propeller for a flutter jump, or skates when traversing ice. They change nothing about actual gameplay, but those small transformations are just so charming and highlight the impeccable art design, and they make an already good control scheme stand out more than it would otherwise, which leads me into the movement. Regular walking and jumping feel great, nothing really to say about them. Yoshi's unique moves are the ones to pay attention to. My favorite move of Yoshi's though would have to be his flutter jump. I love this thing so much, you have no idea. You'd think it'd be game-breaking to use this thing infinitely, but I think it's quite balanced. The level design accounts for it, and it takes some skill to chain your flutter jumps together. It's immensely satisfying when you can use this thing to traverse large distances, and it gives you more options in the levels that you might want to go for. This is all standard stuff for the Yoshi series, so I don't want to give Woolly World too much credit. What might be original, and I mean might, it feels like a glitch, but some level segments account for it by limiting how high you can go, so I have no clue, is how you can swallow or throw Yarn Ball to reset your flutter jump and gain a smidgen of additional height. whether or not it's a glitch or intended doesn't matter. What does is that I abuse the shit out of this, and I love it so much. At times it feels like a speedrun tech, and it's just so fun to use, at least when the game lets you. In short, Yoshi's movement is pretty good, I like it. My favorite aspect of Yarn Yoshi though, is his immense catalog of alternate skins. It's not always a changing Yoshi color this time around. A majority of Yoshis in this game are unique in their designs, and all of them are really f***ing cool. There's so many different costumes that try something different, and there's at least one you're bound to latch onto. And if what you're looking for is Yoshi based off of a licensed character, do I have a surprise for you. You get additional Yoshi variants from Amiibo, and holy shit! This is the best use they have in any game by far. Scanning an Amiibo will unlock a Yarn Yoshi based on the character you scanned, and like, that's unbelievably cool. Dude, I can play as a Yoshi that looks like Sonic the motherfucking Hedgehog. Do you know how much I love that? The 3DS port, Poochie and Yoshi's Woolly World, has even more skins for Amiibo that released after the Wii U version of Woolly World, as well as a tool where you can create your own Yoshi variants, which is fun and all, but it's not the version I played because it objectively looks and performs worse. Amiibo have a bit more functionality outside of costumes too, but it's not nearly as interesting in my opinion. The Yarn Yoshi Amiibos, which, might I add, are top tier Amiibo since they're just plushies with NFC chips. I love mine to bits. We'll save a desired base game skin, which is practically useless. I've never used it because I'd rather keep the Smash Bros. Save data I have on play. I'm pretty sure this is to be used if you want to play with a friend using a skin they haven't unlocked yet, since this game supports local co-op, or possibly that it will use your selected skin instead of the one your amiibo's based on when using them during levels, which isn't worth it in my opinion. Anyways, double Yoshi is explosioning or something. It's a pretty cool alternative method to tackle levels, since you can use your second Yoshi as a reusable yarn ball, but I don't use it a whole lot. Genuinely, my amiibo was sitting on my desk for a majority of my playthrough since I wanted to get more than one level of footage with him, but I just either felt that the next level I was playing didn't suit it, or I completely forgot to. Now, if you actually want a variant for Yarn Yoshi and you don't have any plastic figurines of Nintendo characters at your disposal, you need to collect all 5 Wonder Wools in a level. They're a nice collectible, and I like how they function differently than Smiley Flowers since they can't be collected by a yarn ball. Speaking of, Smiley Flowers return as well, 5 in each level. Also returning from past games are red coins, 20 in each level per usual, instead of stamp patches which you can use in your post on Miiverse to add some flavor. Now, that's a pretty big amount of collectibles to keep track of, which is both really cool since hunting each item down is fun, but it's also detrimental since it eats up a lot of your time and some collectibles are more frustrating to get than others. Like, some are completely tucked away or super cryptic, and when I eventually found them, I was not having it. I will say only a minority are like that. Most are cleverly hidden and not bullshit. If we take a look at the level Yoshi and Cookies, at this point you're supposed to hit one of these cookie platforms to make it to the next section, but just above it you can spot another one of those cookie platforms tucked away that'll give you access to another cookie platform that holds a smiley flower as a secret. But within the same window from before, you can also notice that this block of wool is actually one you can squish down, and doing so reveals a group of beads, some of being stamp patches. All of that was gathered by a single frame, and is a good showcase of how brilliant collectibles are hidden, at least in this scenario. To put it nicely, I like Woolly World's 100% requirements and wouldn't change a thing about it. Outside of completely removing the requirement to beat each level with full health, I think that's f***ing stupid. But going for 100% kinda feels like I'm playing the game incorrectly. My most recent playthrough was any percent, but I did at least try to get most items, especially the Wonder Rolls and Smiley Flowers, so I could show off some of the different Yarn Yoshis and something I'll get into later, so that feeling still lingered. My next playthrough of Woolly World is probably not going to involve any collectibles, which I would be happy to do since it'll allow me to appreciate the levels from a different perspective, which would be wonderful since the levels in Woolly World are so well made, man. Contrary to Mario U and Tropical Freeze, this game's levels aren't about going from point A to point B as much as those games are. Woolly World has a larger focus on exploration, and I love 2D platformers that do that. It does slow down the pacing of the levels, which isn't something I genuinely prefer in a 2D platformer, but it's not a bad thing at all, and something I could easily dismiss. The levels give off such a relaxing vibe that persists throughout the whole game, and I adore it so much. Even when they branch out, like how Up Shuttle Thread Pass is serene, or how the cave levels feel like a laid-back expedition. Woolly World's just a nice, cozy game to play, damn it. Every single level can be dissected to its pure elements, each of them something to appreciate, like the layout of them, how they look from an artistic perspective and how they factor into the level design, how they test the player's knowledge of the game. Woolly World is so peak. Please Nintendo, just re-release Woolly World for the Switch too. I just want a Woolly World re-release so we can have more amiibo costumes, but yeah, I guess a game this good coming to mass audiences would be pretty cool.
Hi everybody, it's me from the future again. So this is a bit more interesting of a case. So in the Nintendo Switch 2 North American Direct only, when showing compatible Nintendo Switch 1 games, right up there you can see the key art for Yoshi's Woolly World. Now this could just be easily dismissed as a mistake since all of the other versions it's crafted world like normal, which would make sense, and it could be seen as a simple mistake, but some people have compared this image with all of the other key art we've gotten for Woolly World, and none of it has matched, which could possibly hint at Woolly World on Switch 1. Which would be so high. Please, Nintendo, please.
One of the game's greatest strengths for its levels that I've neglected to touch on yet has to be the music. I've already given Tropical Freeze the edge with its OST, but Woolly World's not far behind. Its soundtrack ranges from songs that are upbeat, chill, calming, or even f***ing metal. That's crazy to come out of a Yoshi game. Overall, most of Woolly World's songs are simply bops. Whistling alongside the main theme is pretty fun, and there's a part of Scarful Scamper that I think sounds like Video Killed the Radio Star, but I don't know, maybe I'm stretching. Other highlights for me are Clyde Eddy Beach, Lava Scars and Red Hot Blogs, Shy But Deadly, and Up Shuttle Thread Pass. But my favorite song from this game, hands down, shows up in a very specific set of levels. If you manage to collect every smiley flower in a world, you unlock its very own special stage. So f***ing amazing, man. The song just hits so many boxes. It's so catchy and serenading. Like, my first thought when I played through the first special stage initially and first heard the song was that it needed to be in more YouTube videos. My praise for these levels doesn't stop in the music, however. For one, the level design is at its absolute height here. They put the skills you've gained to the test, and are by far the hardest sections of the game. Each one is astoundingly fun to play through and all feel separate from one another. Each collectible, rather than a reward for exploration, is instead a prize you get for being exceptionally good at the game to not only attempt these levels, but to also go the extra mile. There's no checkpoint, so you have to beat them all in one go, heightening both the difficulty and the satisfaction you get for clearing one. I also love the gimmicks all the special levels throughout, except maybe World 2, so that one's not as engaging as the rest. Which is to say, only an A- or something. World 1 makes your platforms extremely limited. World 5 has you riding speeding curtains that challenge your reaction time, especially if you're going for all the collectibles. World 4 is an actually fun auto-scroller as you're constantly under threat by this giant piranha plant, and it's super fun to weave around and find a fast enough path to stay alive. As much as I love the rest of the game's levels, a part of me wants this to be the entire game. Another part, however, reminds me of those wonderful levels that were just so calming, well-crafted, and genuine works of art. And as a complete package, that's what Woolly World is. A work of art. Yoshi's Woolly World is such a comforting game that I'm so happy to have played. Almost every aspect is something I simply cherish. The design of everything sticks out in my mind, the fantastic soundtrack is wonderful, and I especially love how everything unites. Every element of Woolly World is woven tightly together with a powerful thread, and I will continue to love each individual strand that went into crafting this game. God damn it, Nintendo, for the second time re-release this game already. And that's all of the 2D platformers Nintendo released for the Wii U. Overall, it's not much, but these 3 games are special to me in their own individual ways. There's my obsession with Mario U that's deep-fried in irony beyond recognition, Tropical Freeze's committed level of wonderful quality, and the mellow vibes and wonderful views of Woolly World. They all have their unique perks, but only one can be my favorite. Again, I love Mario U to death, but I can't in good faith say I like it more than the other 2. Now, which one of them is better in my eyes? Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze has great aesthetics and presentation along with stellar level ideas. Its controls are simple yet phenomenal. The soundtrack is funky as f***, and it has a funky Kong, love that guy. On the other hand, Yoshi's Woolly World is so unbelievably cozy. The controls are wonderful, everything looks beautiful, the levels are all excellent. I want to hug everything in this game, man. Both of these games are absolute gems, and I would easily understand either decision. It is really close for me, but if I have to choose one, I'm going with Yoshi's Woolly World. I don't know, I think the cozy atmosphere appeals to me a lot. I love how everything is designed, the special stage song I have it set as my timer ring, and it has Meta Knight representation, that's based as f***. That's not to dismiss Tropical Freeze either. The decision was a tough one for me, and I could see myself changing my mind in like 2 months or something. Also, I might want to cover the 2D platformers for other Nintendo systems in the future, and the chances of another Yoshi game winning don't look that great. Even if I end up really liking the first one, it has to compete with Donkey Kong 3 times, which additionally is also guaranteed the title of Best 2D Platformer on the GameCube. Anyways, that's all for me. Remember to like and subscribe. If you do want to see another video where I cover a system's 2D platformers, let me know in the comments, and also which one you would want to see next. With that said, I hope to see you another time. Have a good one.